Welcome into episode 19 of the PrintFest DFS podcast. My name is Justin Rue, alongside Scott Bandy. We're going to be breaking down the Week 15 main slate on Draftkings, and there's a couple guys that are out, a couple guys that we have some value, and there's a couple of just guys in absolute prime spots that are going to be unfadable. So we're going to be here to break it all down. Starting with the injuries, I think the biggest one on the slate is Michael Thomas. He is out. So obviously that opens up Alvin Kamara and his large target share, and Drew Brees is also in. So yeah, there's just a lot of volume to go around there, and certainly we will touch on Alvin Kamara going forward. So Michael Thomas is out, Julio Jones is out, Kenny Galladay continues to be out. He's been out since God knows when. Alex Smith is out, so Dwayne Haskins will be the starter there. Kyle Rudolph is out, opening up Irv Smith as a punt option. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle are both out, as if Brandon Ayuk needed any more help with getting more targets. So, yeah, Brandon Ayuk, we'll talk about him. He's just in a total prime spot as well. That's it for guys who are currently out. Antonio Gibson is doubtful on this slate. And as far as guys who were questionable but are now going to be in, Drew Brees, Raheem Mostert, Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Swift, Denzel Mims, and Matt Breida. They are all in. A couple guys that are still questionable. Matt Stafford, he's probably leaning more towards doubtful, but he is making the trip to Tennessee. Daniel Jones and Evan Ingram are both questionable. Chase Edmonds, Jimmy Graham, which could even help Cole Kmet even more. Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, Gesicki, and Salvin Ahmed are all questionable, but they have been practicing, so it's likely they're going to be playing. Ezekiel Elliott is questionable, so it's possible that Tony Pollard could get opened up for us. And Alexander Madison is also questionable. So that kind of rounds up a lot of the main injuries on this main slate. So we're going to dive into the quarterback position. Our two favorite quarterback plays on the slate. I'm going to start with mine, and it's Jalen Hurts. I think he's probably the consensus best value play on the slate at 5,900. You know, taking on this Arizona team, it's in the dome. Um, you know, it's just his rushing is just really what's going to carry him. I mean, if you think about how rushing works for quarterback scoring, I mean, so 40 rushing yards equals 100 passing yards. I mean, the guy is going to be projected for like 60 or so rushing yards. I mean that's 6 points right there off the bat. If he runs in a touchdown, that's 12, and then you add in he's probably going to throw for another 200 yards. That's another 8 without even throwing a touchdown. I mean, that's just with one rushing touchdown. So I think at 5,900, the floor is massive. He put up 23 points in his first career start against New Orleans Saints. I think that just not overthink this one and you just kind of play Jalen Hurts in this spot. What do you think?
Yep, I'm on board, man. 5,900 Jalen Hurts. I thought he was going to be probably like the low to mid 6K range before we got the salaries on Monday. But yeah, it's a really nice spot for him against Arizona. I expect Arizona to do their part to put up points. Kyler's looking pretty healthy now, finally. So I think the Eagles are going to have to be pretty aggressive on offense. And the thing I really like is not even that he's running; it's that Doug Peterson is scheming runs to him. He had 14 design runs last week, which is really, really nice. That's what we want to see. So it's like they benched Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson started using his brain to call plays. So
Yeah.
uh, I guess that's something to be excited about. So, yeah, man, if he's going to be getting those design runs, kind of like we saw Lamar when he took over, I guess 2 years ago now,
Yeah.
it's really, really safe at 5,900. That floor in this game environment should be really, really nice. So, and of course, I mean, say what you will about his arm. I think he's a decent thrower. I mean, I'm not ready to anoint him anything great yet. But, I mean, if he gets that rushing floor and ends up throwing like 2 touchdowns, I mean, that's just pants off, man. It's
Yeah.
just an explosion waiting to happen.
Absolutely.
Yes, so, and he'll probably be pretty chalky too. But I actually think the high price guys are probably going to get some ownership. Like I think Mahomes, Lamar, Kyler, I think they're going to see ownership this year or this week. But anyway, moving on to my second favorite quarterback in the week. That's Drew Brees, who's back at 5.9K. Finally back, man. I've been so tired of Taysom Hill, and I think you feel the same way. Like yeah, it's just annoying to watch the Saints be, pushed down by this trash can. And I mean, yeah, I'm calling him a trash can. I don't think Taysom Hill is very good. I still don't. But moving into the game, they're 3-point home dogs, over under 52 with a 24.5 implied total. I'm going to expect both the total and the implied total to move upwards now that Breeze has been activated. If we want to talk a little bit about the matchup, Kansas City is allowing the ninth most points to opposing quarterbacks over the last month, so that's pretty solid. Second most passing touchdowns over that span. Um, and it shows when you look at the quarterbacks that have played against in the last few weeks. I mean, last week we saw Tua. He was the highest scoring guy on the slate, put up 31 DK points, hit the bonus, got into the box on the ground as well. So really nice there. A couple weeks ago, Brady hit him for 26 points. A couple weeks before that, Derek Carr hit him for 21 points. So really the last few competent quarterbacks that have faced Kansas City have smashed. And I mean, it's pretty obvious to see why. I mean, Kansas City does their part each and every week, just throwing points on the board. So opposing teams are just forced to do whatever they can do to keep up. So love the spot for Breeze in the dome. It's the prototypical dome shootout spot that we've loved Drew Brees and the Saints offense for years now. Now, Michael Thomas being ruled out, yeah, that puts a little bit of a damper on the game. But if we look at what Breeze did this year without Michael Thomas in 6 games, weeks 2 through 8, Drew Brees averaged 21.3 points a game without Michael Thomas. So, yeah, it does put a little bit of a damper on him, but Brees has shown this year, even at his age, that he's fine enough. Now, maybe coming off this injury, he might, have a little bit of rust that he's going to have to shake off, and that's obviously going to be more difficult to do so without MT in there. So, yeah, I guess it still does, put a little bit of a damper on the Chiefs or on the Saints side. But I'm still very optimistic about this spot. With Breeze at quarterback this year, the Saints have averaged 30.5 points per game versus 24.8 points per game with Taysom. So I think the entire offense takes a bump, even with Michael Thomas out. I think the game environment takes a step up. I think it's an upgrade to all the Chiefs guys as well as the Saints. So it's just looking like a really juicy spot. It's easily the best game on the week. He's cheap. He doesn't run, so he doesn't give you that, that added bonus that Hurts does. But if you want to get leverage off that chalk, I think Drew Brees is a really solid play this week.
No, I fully agree. 5,900. I mean, Hurts is definitely going to be higher owned. So if you're looking to fade Jalen Hurts, I think that absolutely get some leverage on. Getting Drew Brees at home in the dome is always a kind of a good place you always want to be. Yeah, absolutely. So moving over to the running back position, I think that there's 4 key guys on this slate that are that are the top running backs, and I think 2 of them are total locks, and we'll just knock these guys off right here at the top. So Alvin Kamara with Drew Brees back and Michael Thomas out. So you mentioned the splits with Drew Brees with Michael Thomas out. So weeks 2 through 8. Alvin Kamara averaged 9.7 targets per game in those games, and he averaged a 26% target share at the running back position. It's ludicrous. That's absolutely ludicrous. You know, Kamara at 7,400. And it's a decent enough matchup here against Kansas City, who, they allow 4.5 yards per carry. They're 30th DVOA against the run. And they allow 25 DraftKings points per game on the season. So, I think Alvin Kamara is looking healthier the last couple of weeks. He's, he jumped up to 70% of snaps last week. And, over the last 4 weeks, his snaps have gone from 48, up to 62, and then up to 71%. So I think he's getting healthier. And of course, I mean, this Kansas City defense, I mean, they've allowed 151 yards from scrimmage per game to opposing backfields. That's 27th in the league. And one last stat here on Alvin Kamara. So Alvin Kamara with Drew Brees this season, he's averaged 126 yards from scrimmage, and with Taysom Hill, he's only averaged 72. So this is, I don't want to understate this. This is a massive bump up to Alvin Kamara, getting Drew Brees back and then getting Michael Thomas out. It just opens up so many targets. This is a lock button spot. You don't overthink it. You play Alvin Kamara and you move on in your cash games, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is literally everything that we could have wished for and more for Alvin Kamara. Not only do we get Drew Brees and no Michael Thomas, but it's a home shootout spot in the dome versus Kansas City, and Kansas City's going to show up. Patty Mahomes puts up his points every single week, so
Absolutely.
they're going to be forced to be aggressive on offense. So, man, it is just perfect for Alvin Kamara. And at 7.4K, we get the discount because he hasn't been very good lately with Taysom. So I can't imagine fading him here, man. I mean,
Yeah,
30 burger just right on my board, man. Like,
absolutely.
we'll talk about another 30 burger spot. And it's another lock, really. It's Derrick Henry, 9,400. D. Himber is alive and well, and it bit us in the ass pretty bad last week. I mean, he was the highest owned running back on the slate, and he went for 26 carries for 215 yards and 2 tutties. That really nailed in the coffin for us.
Right.
Um, so, and now he gets Detroit, who is arguably an even better spot than he was in last week. I mean, Detroit's allowing the most points per game to opposing running backs on the season, 31 points a game. They've allowed 4.57 yards per carry, the second most rushing touchdowns on the season. I mean, for what it's worth, they've allowed the most receiving touchdowns to running backs on the season. We know Henry's not really that involved in the passing game. Man, it's just like, can they stop anything in regards to running backs? The answer is no. I mean, Tennessee has a 31 implied team total, which is ridiculous. They're 11-point home favorites. And to make matters worse, I don't think Matt Stafford's going to play. Galladay's already been ruled out. We know that the Lions' offense is way, way different with and without Galladay. And then you take, if Stafford doesn't play, I mean, he has both a rib and a thumb injury. Stafford doesn't play, the Lions are fucked. Like, they're done for. They're not going to be able to put up a fight. The Titans are just going to roll. Mike Vrabel is quite literally just going to feed Henry the rock over and over and over and over again. And we can even go down narrative street here. Henry needs 156 yards per game over the final 3 games of the season to hit the 2K mark. And say what you want, I think we both think that Mike Vrabel cares about that. Like, I think Mike Vrabel wants to get Henry to that 2K mark. And depending on who you talk to, I mean, I don't agree with this. I know you don't agree with this, but Derrick Henry's getting MVP buzz. And I guarantee you that Mike Vrabel cares about that too. So getting him to the 2K mark is definitely going to help his MVP odds. I mean, I don't think there's a shot in hell he wins, but I mean, some people are touting him. But I think Mike Vrabel legit cares about this stuff. We know that Mike Vrabel gets a hard on for just jamming the ball to Derrick Henry. And if we want to move away from narrative street and onto, stats, he has the most carries in the NFL. He has the second most red zone carries in the NFL. He's averaging 3.9 red zone touches per game. That's second in the league behind Josh Jacobs. Top 5 percentage in red zone touches or red zone team touch percentage. He has the most rushing yards. He has the most rushing touchdowns. Like, it's just, and now it's December against the worst rushing D in the league. Like, I'm not going to let Derrick Henry bury me again. I just can't do it, especially with, a lot of uncertainty at running back this year. I mean, it's just been so bad. And when you're getting the volume that he's going to get 30 touches in this spot. Like, how does he not? If Matt Stafford sits, the Titans are going to win this game handily, and it's just going to be a Derrick Henry feast. And I'm not fading him this week. Every time I faded him this year, with the exception of 2 weeks ago, it's really bit me in the butt. So it's just too good of a spot. There's too much on the line for Derrick Henry. It's the game script is just couldn't get better. Like, man, it's just another 30 burger. It's just waiting to happen. Just lock it in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only way you're fading Henry is if you're in a tournament and then you're just hoping that the touchdowns go to the receivers and he gets just shut out of the end zone because he's running for 150 plus yards in this game and there's just no if or buts about it. It's happening. It just matters how many times he gets into the box, which, with his kind of red zone presence, who knows? He can get in the box 4 or 5 times. I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. So moving on, I think those two are our locks. And so now we get to our last running back position. And this is actually a good debate here. And it's Cam Akers or Jonathan Taylor. So Cam Akers has came on in the last 2 weeks. He's really been a revelation. He's had 63 and 79% of the snaps in the last 2 weeks. So he's basically taken on the bell cow workload. And he's at home. They have a 31 implied total. The Rams. They're 17-point favorites here against the Jets. It is nice. He's a little bit cheaper than Jonathan Taylor at 6,600. Um, he's averaged in his last two starts where he's really came on. He's averaged 26 and a half touches per game and 144 yards from scrimmage. So, and all of the work inside of the 10. So he is their bell cow. He's locked in. I mean, it's hard to trust McVay, but they've shown in the last 2 weeks that they are willing to give him a bell cow workload. And now he's taking on a Jets defense that, they sell it to stop the run, but they still face 30 backfield touches per game. That's 29th in the league. The efficiency might not be there against a defense that only allows 4.1 yards per attempt on the ground in their eighth DVOA. So, I mean, he might not be the most efficient, but he's probably going to be getting 25 plus touches in this spot, and they have a 31 implied total. So I could see him scoring twice. I could see him scoring three times. 6,600. It's a good debate between him and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, so before we get into Taylor versus Akers, I guess I'll just give the rundown on JT here. So Jonathan Taylor is a little bit more expensive at 7,200, and he's really much like Cam Akers. He's starting to get going down here, down the stretch. Last three games, which were week 11, 13, and 14, he missed that week 12 game. He's gone 22 for 90 with 4 for 24 through the air week 11 or week 11. 13 for 91 and 3 for 44 and 1 in the same spot 2 weeks ago. And then last week, obviously, he went 20 for 150 and 2 with 2 for 15 through the air. So he's averaging 21 touches per game over that 3-game sample. Now, that being said, he's only played 52%, 47%, and 54% of the snaps. So Nyheim Hines is obviously – he's still going to be involved, and that's the scary part about Jonathan Taylor, right? Hines has 9, 9, 11 touches the last 3 games with the healthy JT. It does help that, Jordan Wilkins has kind of phased himself out. He's only played 18% and then 9% of the snaps the last 2 weeks. So it really is just Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines now. But obviously this is not a locked-in spot. What happens if, say, the Texans get up like 14-0 or so? What if they get up big? Is it just going to be the Nyheim Hines show, or are they going to ride out Jonathan Taylor? So that's the one thing that's a little bit scary, but the matchup is just pristine, right? I give my spiel about how bad Houston is against opposing running backs every week, and I'll give it again now. In 13 games, they've given up 15 RB1 performances. In 13 games, they've given up 15 RB1 performances. That's ridiculous. They're giving up 5.37 yards per carry in the season. That is unspeakably bad. Like, that is just historically awful. The second most points per game allowed to opposing running backs, 31 points a game. They've allowed the second most rushing touchdowns on the season. And they've allowed by far the most explosive runs, 48 explosive runs on the season. To second place has given up 41. And it's not just volume related. They are also allowing a league high explosive run rate of 14%. So it's the best spot that Jonathan Taylor could really have. Again, 2 weeks ago, the same matchup, he went 13 for 91, which is about 7 yards per carry, and then 3 for 41 and 1 through the air. Now, if he gets the same kind of volume that we saw last week, if he gets 18 to 20 carries and 3 to 5 targets in the passing game, it really could be an explosion for him. But I do tend to like to play Cam Akers a little bit more just because he's discounted and there's not a lot of value on this slate. So being able to get similar workloads at a discount, and I mean, they're playing the Jets, right? So Akers is obviously in a great spot. The matchup probably favors Taylor, but the value we get with Akers is just a little bit better than Jonathan Taylor. So I lean that side. What about you?
Yeah, I think I lean. So in a vacuum, if they were the same price, I lean Jonathan Taylor. The fact that Cam Akers is a bit cheaper does open up one extra wide receiver spot for me. So I do prefer Cam Akers in this spot. I think his workload's a little more locked in than Jonathan Taylor's, just based on their snaps the last couple weeks. So, yeah, both rookie running backs. They're both pretty elite talents. We're seeing Jonathan Taylor really start to turn it on here. But I think I do slightly prefer Cam Akers in this spot. I mean, the
Yeah, it's
price
just
for
a week. It's a week where we're just value is scarce, so you kind of gotta.
yeah,
And lineup construction is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, we're pretty much paying it up at running back and filling the holes at receivers. So any value you can find on the board this week is really necessary.
yeah. And the price of Jonathan Taylor is really gotten up there pretty quick. I mean, last week he was 5,800. Now he's up to 72. It really just kind of skyrocketed. Um, so I think the workload is a little more locked in for Cam Akers, and he's a little bit cheaper. So for that reason, I think I prefer Cam Akers, but don't hold me to the fire on that one. I'm not quite sure just yet on that one. So moving over to wide receiver, there is one really solid play on the slate at wide receiver. And then other than that, it's kind of all over the place. And that solid play is Brandon Ayuk. So he's 6,300. We keep talking about these rookies. I mean, we've talked about Jalen Hurts. We talked about Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers. And now we're going to talk about another rookie in Brandon Ayuk. These rookies are just balling out this year. And Brandon Ayuk, he is not playing like a rookie. Let's just run down the game in here. So over the last 5 weeks, he has averaged 13 targets per game. He's he's averaged 94 yards from scrimmage per game, and he's averaged a .74 weight opportunity rating, which is third on this slate. And he's also averaged 22 Draftkings points per game over his last five. In the last six, he's scored a touchdown or surpassed 100 yards in 6 straight games. And he's taking on the Cowboys, who are obviously, as we know, garbage. They're 23rd DVOA against the pass. They allow 8.8 yards per target. They allow a 65% catch rate, and they allow a league high 8.9% touchdown rate. So, uh, like we mentioned, with no Debo Samuel, no George Kittle, at 6,300, Ayuk is popping in all and everything, and rightfully so. And he is the best wide receiver play on the slate, point per dollar, and it's not even really close.
Yep, he's essentially a lock to. His price was one of the first things that I locked into when I went over salaries on Monday. And yeah, I'm going to have to publicly take an L on Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I remember in the offseason when we were gearing up for the fantasy season, me and you had a lot of discussion about Brandon Ayuk and what his role in this offense would be. And I basically said, I don't like him. I just don't see, you know, I don't see where the role opens up for him with Debo and Kittle and, run first offense, blah, blah, blah. But man, and I wasn't even that big on him in draft season either. Coming into the NFL draft, but man, he just looks like a straight up alpha. Like he's been smashing week in, week out. Whether or not Debo's there, he's smashed. Um, and now they're playing Dallas, and if we remember early on in the season, like man, we targeted X wide receivers versus Dallas, and they smashed every single week. And like I don't see that changing here. Like man, Brandon Ayuk is not playing like a rookie. Like he's as consistent of a receiver right now as you can find. So I mean, he's a it's a really nice spot for him, man. And the price point, and there's not a lot to like at receiver this week either. That's the other thing. Like we're not paying up at receiver, so he's in that nice mid range where it's easy to slot him in and really feel good about it. So I love Brandon Ayuk. He's essentially a lock for me.
Absolutely.
So I'll move on to one of the higher priced guys that I like. And again, like I said, lineup construction seems to be pretty straightforward. You're really paying up at all three running back spots because we're devoid of any real true value at the position outside of maybe like a Leonard Fournette, if that's the route you want to go, which I mean, personally, I really don't. But the guy I really like is DeAndre Hopkins at 7,900. Kyler finally seems to be healthy. His shoulder looks a little bit better. He's finally running again. He had a pretty strong showing last week, and it's a pretty good spot. Philly's been getting absolutely smacked around by wide receiver ones the last few weeks. Now, granted, they've been getting smacked around by elite wide receiver ones. Michael Thomas hit him for 8 for 84. Devontae Adams 10 for 121 and 2. DK Metcalf 10 for 177. Even Darius Slayton though hit him for 5 for 93. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is just another world-class wide receiver. He's in that same tier with MT Adams and DK. Um, Over the last 4 weeks, he's averaged 9.75 targets a game. He's at a 29.1% team target share. That's good for third best in the NFL over that span. 0.63 whoppers, pretty solid. And to make matters worse, the Eagles are already out. Avonte Maddox is already out with a knee injury. He's confirmed out. And Darius Slay is questionable with a concussion. Now, he did get in limited practices Thursday and Friday. So it's definitely another point to monitor. But whether or not Darius Slay plays, I think is kind of irrelevant. Like Darius Slay has been getting manhandled by alpha wide receivers the last month. And I don't really see that changing now. And D Hop's just about as consistent of a guy as you can find. Like he's had double-digit fantasy points in all but 2 games. He's had 20 DK points in 7 of 13 games played. Really, the only thing that you can really nitpick about is his ADOT. His ADOT is so low that it really can limit his upside some weeks, and it's very frustrating when you see him go like 8 for 53. Like that's very frustrating. But outside of that one little nitpicky point, I think he makes for a really solid play. I think he's going to feast against Philly. And I mean, I think it's another guy who I think he could go 10 for 120 in a tutty, and I would not be shocked. So again, at 7.9K, he's expensive. It's hard to get up there this week. If you do get up there to him, your lineup construction is obviously going to be a lot different than everyone else. So your lineup's probably going to be less chalky. So you'll have some leverage against the field, but I probably won't be getting there in cash, but I really think he's a great play regardless.
Yeah, he definitely is a solid play. It's hard to ever really fade Hopkins. We were playing him a lot early in the season, then he kind of hit a lull. They're kind of just using him on like the left side of the field, and not being very creative with D Hop. Kingsbury, they just kind of run what they run with the air raid and don't really pivot off that. So yeah, I mean, I do like D Hop though. He's kind of underpriced, for his role. I mean, his floor is just so high. It's gonna be tough to get up to him with how lineup construction is going, paying up for these elite running backs. So I want to bring up kind of like 3 guys. They're kind of like 3 value guys all in one here. I'm just going to kind of throw them all together. So the first one, I'm going to start with the cheapest one. It's Michael Gallup. He's projecting really well on this slate. At 3,500, this is the cheapest I've ever seen Michael Gallup. We know he's an elite talent. He really is. I truly believe he's a top 25 talent at wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know, but I truly do think he is. Obviously, there's no Dak Prescott. Last year Michael Gallup had 1,000 yards, and he's down at 3,500. When have you seen a guy who is in his prime have over 1,000 yards the prior season, then be 3,500 at some point in the next season? So I mean, over the last 5 games, he's averaged 7.5 targets per game and a 0.57 weighted opportunity rating, which is, honestly pretty solid especially for 3,500. Not to mention that he's an elite talent. Obviously he's got Andy Dalton back there, and it's not a great matchup with San Francisco, but it's not necessarily a matchup that we just like are running away from and just like not going anywhere near it. It's not like it's the Rams or something like that. So 3,500. It's kind of he's just kind of a layup. He gets these deep shots. He has a 10 ADOT, and he's averaging 0.7 end zone targets per game as well. So I think that Michael Gallup at 3,500 is definitely a good value guy can go to. I think you can also go to, now that we have Michael Thomas out, Emmanuel Sanders. So Emmanuel Sanders he was out for a couple weeks while Michael Thomas was out, but when he did play, so he was there with Drew Brees in and with Michael Thomas out. Emmanuel Sanders did play weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in those weeks, he averaged a 23% target share. So honestly, I mean, that's really not horrible. He's 4,200. So that's something that we can kind of latch onto. In those games, he averaged 14.5 points per game. So it's really not bad at all. If you told me I can get 14.5 points per game from a wide receiver at 4,200, I think that I would take that all day. So that's really solid. I think he's pretty fundamentally underpriced at 4,200 with no With no Michael Thomas, he's kind of the de facto wide receiver one for this team, and he's got Drew Brees back. So I think Emmanuel Sanders is back in play. I think he still has juice. And then one last guy that, I'm bringing up all these guys that are old, but T.Y. Hilton. I mean, he's been really solid the last couple of weeks. I know he's not a guy we don't really want to play at his age, but man, I mean, he's really been coming on the last couple of weeks. He's averaged 71 yards per game over his last five. That's pretty fine. I mean, it's not bad at all. He's averaged a 29% target share in his last two games. And of course, at home in the dome, 29 implied total for the Colts, 5,500, taking on this Houston defense that allows 8.6 yards per target, a 71% catch rate. They're 26 DVOA against the pass. It's a team that he has smashed seemingly every game against Houston in his entire career. He's beat the hell out of them. So, yeah, he might be someone that's kind of tough to trust, given his age and what he's done this year. But the last couple of weeks, he's really been coming on. It's a solid spot for him. So all of Michael Gallup, Emmanuel Sanders, and T.Y. Hilton, I think, are all perfectly squarely in play for cash games. What do you think?
Yeah, they're for sure all in play. If I had to rank them, I think for sure Manny Sanders is my favorite. I guess I have such disdain for T.Y. Hilton, but I guess I would have him second and then Gallup third. Just starting with Manny Sanders, yeah. I mean, without Michael Thomas in this game environment against KC, 4,200 is criminally underpriced, and that helps open up a little bit of value at receiver that we need on this slate. So yeah, he's very, very strong. I'm really into that this week. Ty at 5,500 for at least, I think he's just gonna be a fit for a lot of lineups. Like I've been fooling around and he just helps. He just fits nicely with what I'm trying to do. I don't feel comfortable with it whatsoever. I don't like T.Y. Hilton's been bad for like most of the last 2 years until the last 3 weeks. And it's like, what happened here? Like he's catching like 80% of his targets. Like doesn't, I don't know. This just seems very fluky to me and difficult to trust. Like where did this just come from out of nowhere? Like where has this been the whole time? So, but the matchup again, pristine. He's crushed the Texans for. I mean, I feel like I've been on him every game against Houston for his career in DFS, really. So
Yeah.
it's objectively a really good spot, and he's going to be very popular, I think. So he's fine enough, but I don't trust it. And then Michael Gallup, like I don't think enough people remember that last year on a point per game basis, Michael Gallup was better than Amari Cooper. And I'm pretty sure Michael Gallup was outpacing him on a targets per game basis. And now, I mean, they've just kind of subjected him to this, prototypical deep threat guy who's, I mean, how many DPIs have we seen for him this year? Like, if they would actually use him for more than just a deep threat, he could be such a good player. And despite not having Dak, despite not seeing the targets he did last year, despite being the third option at best in this offense, he's still going to have something like 800 receiving yards this year.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, how many teams have a guy as their third wide receiver option catching, 800 yards? And at 3,500, we've seen like Dalton definitely favors him. So at 3,500, like, how much does he really need to do for you to be happy and get there? Like, not much. And so, like, with his talent level and that price, he's always going to be fine. He's also very strong. So all three of them are firmly in play for me. The last guy I want to talk about at receiver is Terry McLaurin at 6.6K. Now, it's a really good spot. Seattle's allowing a league high 46 points per game to opposing wide receivers on the season. Now, if you look at the last 4 weeks, they look like they've been good, right? Seattle's actually allowed the fewest points per game to opposing receivers over the last month. But I think I'm going to write that off because they played all of nobody. They played the Jets, who are they're putrid. The Giants, putrid. Philly, Carson Wentz has been awful. And then they played Arizona with a beat-up Kyler Murray. So I'm willing to throw that sample out. Now, granted, Washington's not very good either, right? We got Dwayne Haskins in here, but when I was doing my research on McLaurin, I wanted to see the splits with and without Haskins for McLaurin. So the first 4 games with Haskins, he had a 27.2% team target share, 7th highest in the league. He had 40+% of the team's air yards. That's really solid. A 23% red zone share, 10.2 ADOT, 0.69 Whopper. All really solid metrics there. Now, weeks 5 to 14 without Haskins, his target share dropped to 24.8%, but everything else largely remained the same. He had 43.7% of the team's air yards. He had a 25% red zone target share, 10.1 ADOT, 0.68 Whopper. So really, he's been the same guy with and without Haskins, or regardless of who's played quarterback this year. So that's nice. So really marginal differences there. Now, the last couple of weeks he struggled, but I think it's a really, really solid get right spot, especially at his, at this mid-range receiver spot. We know how good he is. I mean, Terry McLaurin is just an absolute alpha. Here's a couple of reasons why I like him so much. So on the season, Washington averages 25.6 pass attempts per game. Opponents versus Seattle over the last 4 weeks have averaged 34 pass attempts per game. And on the season, they've averaged 41 pass attempts. So we're talking about a margin of, 10 to 15 pass attempts more than what they're averaging. It's probably what they're going to end up with. Seattle's going to be winning this game despite Washington's good defense, in my opinion. So they're going to be forced to throw. Antonio Gibson's doubtful. They're not going to be able to run the ball very good with McKissick and Peyton Barber. And Seattle's allowed the third most explosive pass plays on the season, which sets up great for McLaurin's skill set. We always love to see a 50-yard touchdown from Terry McLaurin. And speaking of which, he only has 3 touchdowns on the season, despite him leading the team in every relevant statistic by a massive margin. He only has 3 touchdowns. So he's probably due a little bit of positive regression there if Haskins can, manage to not suck it up on Sunday. But, yeah, man, Terry McLaurin against, the worst secondary in the league at 6,600. I think it's a really good spot. I don't know how owned he'll be. Yes, it's a little bit scary with Haskins, but he's basically set up for the same spot that we've seen all season. So at 6.6K, I think he's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that you're probably getting some lower ownership on him as well because he's kind of been falling off the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, definitely can. I don't think he's going to be very owned. I really don't. There's a lot of recency bias in DFS, and I can't see him being very owned at all on this slate. So, moving over to the tight end position, I think that, we talk about punting it off all the time, and it's a nice slate to punt it off. Yeah, Kelsey's up there, and he's having a career year. He's having the best season of his career, but it's tough. He's up there at 8K. So, we talked about paying up for these running backs. I don't know how the hell you can fit Henry, Kamara, and Kelsey in there, and Ayuk. I don't know how you can get there. So I think the best punt play on the slate, I think there's 2 of them. So Irv Smith, and he's not necessarily a punt, he's like 3,600. He's nice with no Kyle Rudolph. But I think Cole Kmet, and we've been talking about him for a couple weeks now. He really, since their week 11 bye, he's kind of taken over as the starter. And Jimmy Graham has kind of been cast aside. Now, it helps Jimmy Graham is also questionable. So if Jimmy Graham is out, it's lock city for Cole Kmet, but I think Cole Kmet's a really solid play even with Jimmy Graham there because Jimmy Graham's basically playing like 20% of the snaps at this point. Cole Kmet played 85% of snaps last week, so he is entrenched as the tight end 1 on Chicago. And Chicago, I mean, to their credit, since week 11, they've averaged 30 points per game in their 3 games since week 11. I mean, their offense has been humming, and Cole Kmet's been a big part of it. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaged 21% and 21% of the targets. And now he's taking on a Minnesota defense that's 30th in yards per target allowed to tight ends. They allow 8.3 yards per target, and they allow a 71% catch rate to opposing tight ends. So this is definitely an above average matchup for Cole Kmet. And now entrenched as the starter, I think that at 3K, you could certainly do a lot worse. He's a nice punt play. He was a good prospect coming out. He's a 2nd round pick. I think that you could certainly do a lot worse at 3K.
Yeah, I mean, we've been on Kmet for 3 weeks now. He's just getting solid volume at that price point, and how much we love to punt tight end. So 3K, again, in a league where we're really subject to find value where we can, tight end's always the spot where I look for value. And, it's a great matchup here against Minnesota. Hopefully, I mean, if we get no Jimmy Graham, that'd be awesome, man.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean, I'm probably just going to lock in Connect to get that value. So he makes for a really strong play again. And really, I mean, if you're going to pay for a tight end, you're paying for Travis Kelsey, or you should just punt it off, right?
Yep.
Travis Kelsey, he's 8K this week. Last week he was 7,400. I said he should probably be 8K. If he was a wide receiver, he would be the wide receiver 3 on the season. He's leading the league in receiving yards, if you can believe that. And he's going to not only break the record that he broke before Kittle for tight end receiving yards in a season, but he's going to break Kittle's record too. Like this dude, like he just might be the GOAT. Like it's just week in, week out. He's had 10 plus targets, 5 out of the last 6 games. Yes, New Orleans they're decent against tight ends, but that's irrelevant because it's Patrick Mahomes, it's the Chiefs offense, it's Travis Kelsey. The Chiefs are going to put up points. I don't care about matchups really when it comes to the Chiefs. So he's a freak. He's on pace to break that record. I know he wants to get there, especially after he broke it and then Kittle broke his record the same year. He's had double-digit fantasy points in all but one game. So, I mean, if you want to play him, you want to pay the 8K price tag, he's worth it. He is electric at the tight end position. He's just as good as all these high-priced receivers. And honestly, like when you pay up for a guy like Travis Kelsey, say you pay up for Kelsey and you punt your third receiver spot with a guy like Michael Gallup at 3,500. Compare that to playing like Irv Smith at 3,600, pretty much punting off tight end, and then you pay 7,900 for DeAndre Hopkins. I feel better about Travis Kelsey and Michael Gallup than I do about DeAndre Hopkins and Irv Smith. And it's not even really that close. So that's something that, I need to think about more often is really just slotting in Kelsey now. But now Kelsey's getting to the point where, he's pretty pricey. So it's tough to do that. But earlier in the season, I don't know why I overlooked Kelsey. That's definitely something to remember for my process moving forward to next season. But I mean, it's just another spot where Kelsey's probably just going to smash. Like it's another 25-point outing just waiting to happen. So at 8K, if you want to play him, I'm never going to say it's a bad idea.
Yeah, the issue with Kelsey is just, it's not Kelsey that's the issue. It's his price, and it's getting in Derrick Henry in this home run spots, getting it out on Kamara. It's so tough. You would have to punt off with Leonard Fournette against Atlanta. You would have to punt off 2 wide receiver spots. Actually, you'd have to punt off all 3 of them. Honestly, you would have to go with 3 wide receivers under 4,500 to get to Kelsey, Henry, and Kamara. So it's I don't know. Maybe it is viable. I'm gonna mess around with some stuff. I don't think it is. We would need like one more wide receiver value to open up to really get there. So that is basically going to do it for this slate. I think we basically hit on all of the best plays, all the best values that we think, at least here sitting here on a Friday night. Of course, there's always guys that get put on the COVID list on Saturday, which might shake up this slate again, and then we'll kind of adjust from there. But at least on Friday night at 7 p.m., I mean, this is what we got. So with that, that's going to do it for episode 19 of the PrintFest DFS podcast. Can't believe it's already week 15. We're 19 episodes in, and man, it's been a ride. We've gotten our butts kicked a couple weeks. We've kicked butt a couple weeks, and hopefully we can get back on the right path after a hard one last week, and just smack me if I fade Derrick Henry this week. Just smack me. I can't do it. My lineup.
We're in the heart of things.
Yeah, my lineup on DraftKings should
We're in
come.
the heart
of yeah. Oh God. So that's gonna do it. We'll be back on Monday night breaking down our lineups and breaking down our decisions and what went on over the weekend, over the carnage of the weekend. So until then, good luck, everybody.